Picture this. A beautiful, slender black woman stands frozen in the center of a luxury ballroom. 200 wealthy guests watch as 5 women in designer dresses circle her like predators. Her emerald dress, 43 hours of hand-stitched work, suddenly feels like a target on her back. I didn't know this gala had a dress code. From a thrift store, one of them says. Laughter, sharp, crystalline, cruel. Then they notice it. Her shoe, the heel separating from the sole. Someone should call security, they say, before she hurts someone important. Isabella feels tears burning behind her eyes. She's spent her entire life being dismissed, but tonight she refuses to run. And that's when the room goes silent. A man walks through the crowd, black suit, white tiger tattoo crawling up his neck. Everyone knows who he is. Everyone fears him. Kang Min-jun, Korean Mafia boss, the most dangerous man in the room. He walks straight to her, and in front of 200 shocked witnesses, he kneels at her feet. What happened next destroyed the woman who mocked her, changed Isabella's life forever, and revealed a secret about a dead mother's dress that explained everything. Before we start the story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, love, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Millennium Hotel cast fractured light across 200 faces that had never known hunger. Isabella Monroe stood at the entrance of the ballroom, her emerald dress catching that light like hope catching on broken glass. She had no way of knowing that in exactly 14 minutes, the most dangerous man in the room would kneel at her feet. She had no way of knowing that her shame would become someone else's redemption. She had no way of knowing that the last dress a dead woman ever sewed would save her life tonight. But that knowledge lived in the future. Right now, in this moment, Isabella only knew the weight of eyes that had already decided she didn't belong. The invitation had come 3 days ago. Mrs. Patterson, one of her few wealthy clients, had called with urgency in her voice. "My mother fell. I have to fly to Boston tonight. The gala. I already paid for the ticket, $500. Please, Isabella, don't let it go to waste." Isabella had hesitated. $500. That was rent. That was fabric for 6 dresses. That was meals for a month. But Mrs. Patterson had insisted. "You deserve a night of beauty. You work so hard. Please." So Isabella had worked harder. 43 hours across 3 sleepless nights. The emerald silk had cost her last savings. Each seam was hand-stitched with French technique she'd learned from YouTube videos at 3 a.m. The cut was calculated to celebrate her body, not apologize for it. When she'd looked in the mirror that evening, for one brief moment, she'd felt beautiful. That feeling died the moment she entered the ballroom. Victoria Ashford Chen noticed her first. She always noticed weakness first. It was her particular talent, honed through 42 years of being born rich and staying cruel. She stood near the champagne fountain, surrounded by her usual circle of women whose faces had been sculpted into permanent surprise by expensive surgeons. "Girls," Victoria said, her voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "Look." 5 pairs of eyes turned. 5 pairs of eyes assessed. 5 pairs of eyes found Isabella wanting. Isabella felt it like a physical touch. She'd felt it before, of course. She'd felt it in fabric stores when clerks followed her. She'd felt it in design school when professors praised her ethnic aesthetic. She'd felt it every time someone asked if she made urban streetwear. But here, under these chandeliers, surrounded by people draped in casual wealth, the feeling crystallized into something sharp and surgical. She walked forward anyway. Dignity was a muscle. She'd been exercising it her whole life. Victoria moved to intercept. The other women followed like sharks scenting blood in water. "Welcome," Victoria said, and her smile was a beautiful, terrible thing. We don't often see new faces at these events. Isabella recognized the pause, that careful space where an insult lived without being spoken. "Thank you for having me," she said, keeping her voice level. "Oh, we didn't," Victoria laughed, light and musical. "I mean, we didn't organize this. That would be the museum board. But we do appreciate enthusiasm for the arts." The other women tittered. One of them, a blonde in head-to-toe Chanel, leaned in conspiratorially. "Where did you get your dress, darling? It's so unique." "I made it," Isabella said, and she heard the defensive edge in her own voice. She hated that edge. She hated that they'd put it there. "Oh." Victoria's eyes widened with theatrical delight. "How industrious. I love the whole handmade aesthetic. Very artisanal, very Brooklyn." "It's very brave," another woman added. "Wearing something homemade to an event like this, I could never." Isabella felt heat rising in her chest. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "They want you to react, baby. Don't give them the satisfaction." But her grandmother had never stood in a room where her humanity was being dismantled, stitch by stitch. "I think craftsmanship matters," Isabella said quietly. "Whether it's made in an atelier in Paris or in my apartment in Harlem." "Oh, absolutely," Victoria agreed, her voice dripping with false warmth. "I actually donate to several charities that teach sewing skills to underprivileged communities. It's so important to give people practical skills." The condescension landed like a slap. Isabella's jaw tightened, but before she could respond, she felt it, a subtle shift in her right foot. Her shoe, the heel, the adhesive was failing. "No, not now. Please, not now." She tried to adjust her weight discreetly, but Victoria's eyes were too sharp. They dropped to Isabella's feet. Her smile widened. "Oh my goodness," Victoria said, her voice pitching with concern that fooled no one. "Your shoe, is it—" Isabella looked down. The heel was separating from the sole. Slowly. Inevitably. Like everything she'd worked for, coming apart under scrutiny. "It's fine," Isabella said, but her voice came out strangled. "It's really not safe," the blonde woman said. "You could trip. You could hurt someone." "Someone should call security," another woman added, "before there's an incident." They were circling now. Literal circling. 5 women in dresses that cost more than Isabella's yearly income, forming a wall of judgment around her broken shoe and her homemade dress, and her audacity to exist in their space. Isabella felt her eyes beginning to burn, the familiar sting that came before tears. She'd survived poverty. She'd survived racism. She'd survived every professor who told her she'd never make it in fashion. But somehow, in this moment, surrounded by people whose cruelty was cultivated and casual, she felt something inside her beginning to crack. And then, the room went silent. Not gradually, instantly, like sound itself had been murdered. Isabella looked up. Every person in the ballroom had turned toward the entrance. Every conversation had stopped mid-sentence. Even the string quartet faltered, violins trailing into confused quiet. A man was walking through the crowd. He moved like violence in a very expensive suit. Black fabric that absorbed light. White shirt open at the collar. And there, visible above the crisp white cotton, crawling at the side of his neck like it was claiming territory. A tattoo of a white tiger. Isabella had never seen him before, but her body recognized danger before her mind could process it. Every instinct screamed, predator. He walked with purpose. People moved out of his way without being asked, without even being looked at. They simply parted, like his presence alone was enough to rearrange reality. And he was walking toward her. Victoria had gone pale. The other women had stopped smiling. One of them actually stepped backward. The man stopped directly in front of Isabella. He was tall, not towering, but substantial. His face was angular, almost severe. His eyes were black and bottomless and completely, terrifyingly focused on her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Isabella couldn't have spoken if she'd wanted to. Her throat had closed. Then, slowly, deliberately, Kang Min-jun knelt on the marble floor. The entire ballroom gasped. Someone dropped a champagne glass. The sound of crystal shattering was the only noise in a room of 200 people. "Permit me," he said, in English flavored with a Korean accent. His voice was quiet, but it carried. It resonated. His hands, scarred across the knuckles, marked with a life she couldn't imagine, reached for her damaged shoe with impossible gentleness. Isabella's mind could not process what her eyes were seeing. The most terrifying man she had ever encountered was kneeling before her, cradling her broken shoe like it was something sacred. His fingers moved with precision. He examined the separated heel, turning it slightly to catch the light. "The adhesive failed," he said, more to himself than to her. "Cheap glue. Not your fault." He reached into his inner jacket pocket. Isabella watched, frozen, as he produced a small tube. Industrial adhesive. The kind that bonded metal to metal, that held structures together permanently. I always carry this, he said, as if answering a question she hadn't asked. His eyes flickered up to meet hers briefly. There was something there, something that looked almost like understanding. You never know when something valuable will break. He applied the glue with surgical care. His movements were controlled, methodical. These were hands that had held weapons. Isabella could see the scars, the slightly misaligned knuckle on his left hand that suggested it had been broken and healed wrong. But right now, those hands were impossibly gentle. Victoria found her voice first. It came out higher than usual, strained.
Mr. Kang, this really isn't necessary. We were just...
You were just what?
He didn't look up from his work. He was pressing the heel firmly back into place, counting silently. 30 seconds for the adhesive to bond. His voice remained soft, but there was something underneath it. Something cold and patient and absolutely certain. Please, continue. Victoria's mouth opened, closed. No words came out. The other women had scattered like startled birds. They stood at various distances now, pretending to examine paintings on the walls, suddenly fascinated by their own champagne glasses. But their eyes kept darting back.
Everyone's eyes were locked on the scene unfolding in the center of the ballroom. Min Jun held the shoe steady. 20 seconds left. He glanced up at Isabella, really looked at her. His gaze traveled from her face down to the dress, and something shifted in his expression. Something softened, just fractionally. Your dress, he said, quietly. You made this yourself? Isabella's voice came out as a whisper. Yes. How long did it take? 43 hours. He nodded slowly, as if this confirmed something he'd already suspected. French seams on the interior? She blinked, startled. How do you? My mother was a seamstress. He said it simply, factually. But Isabella heard the weight beneath the words, the past tense, the way his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She worked for women like them. He tilted his head slightly, indicating Victoria and her friends without looking at them. Rich women. Women who treated her like furniture, like air, like nothing. 10 seconds left. He was still holding the shoe, still pressing the heel in place, but his attention was entirely on Isabella now. She sewed every day, sometimes 16 hours. Her fingers bled. She developed arthritis before she was 40, but she never complained. His voice remained soft, conversational, but everyone in the ballroom was straining to hear. She told me once that sewing was the only thing she could control, that when she made something beautiful, it proved she existed. 5 seconds. When I was 12, she made herself a dress, blue cotton, simple. It took her 40 hours because she worked on it at night after her regular jobs. She made it perfect. Every seam invisible, every button placed exactly right. He paused. She wore it to her own funeral. She left a note. It said, "So they cannot laugh at me in my coffin." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It pressed against Isabella's ears like deep water. 0 seconds. The adhesive had bonded. Min-jun carefully slid the shoe back onto Isabella's foot. His touch was respectful, impersonal, but there was care in it. He adjusted the strap, making sure it sat comfortably. Then he stood, unfolding to his full height, and offered her his hand. She took it. His palm was warm, solid. He steadied her as she tested the repaired shoe. It held perfectly. "Thank you," Isabella managed. Her throat was tight. He inclined his head slightly. Then he turned to face Victoria. The temperature in the room dropped.
Victoria Ashford Chen had spent her entire life being the most important person in every room she entered. She had perfected the art of social dominance. She knew how to wield silence, how to deploy a raised eyebrow like a weapon, how to destroy someone with a smile. But standing there, with Kang Min-jun's black eyes fixed on her, she looked small, fragile, prey.
"Victoria Ashford Chen,"
he said, and her name sounded like an indictment.
"Your handbag, Hermes Birkin, white. It's authentic, yes?"
Victoria's hand instinctively went to the bag hanging from her arm.
"Of course it's authentic. It cost
$53,200.
Min-jun interrupted smoothly.
Purchased 3 months ago through a private dealer. A dealer who works with my organization."
The color drained from Victoria's face.
"That particular bag," Min-jun continued, his voice never rising, never changing tone, "was part of a shipment reported stolen from a container in Singapore. Police are still investigating. Very actively investigating." My husband bought it. I had no idea." "Your husband," Min-jun smiled. It was the most terrifying smile Isabella had ever seen. It was technically a smile, lips curved, teeth visible, but it contained no warmth, no humanity. It was a predator showing its teeth. "Richard Chen. Interesting man. He owes $2.3 million to my associates in Macau. Gambling debts. The interest compounds weekly. Did he mention that to you?" Victoria swayed slightly. One of her friends moved forward as if to catch her, then thought better of it and stepped back. "I think," Min-jun said gently, "you should speak with your husband tonight, before my associates do. They are not as patient as I am." He turned back to Isabella. The smile disappeared. His expression softened again, returning to something almost human. "Ms.
Monroe. Isabella Monroe."
"Ms. Monroe." He gave a small, respectful bow. "My mother would have loved your dress. She would have understood the work, the 43 hours, the care in every stitch." He paused. "She would have seen you." Isabella felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, opening. "I'm sorry about your mother." "So am I." He extended his hand again, not to shake, but palm up. An invitation. "Would you do me the honor of walking with me? I would like to show these people something." Isabella looked at his hand. Scarred, dangerous, connected to a life she couldn't begin to understand. But in this moment, it was also the only hand in this entire ballroom that had treated her like she mattered. She placed her hand in his. He led her through the crowd. People parted silently, creating a pathway. He walked her to the center of the ballroom, directly under the largest chandelier. The light fell on them like a spotlight. "Ladies and gentlemen," Minjun said, and his voice carried effortlessly through the space. Not loud, just absolute. May I have your attention? Every eye was already on them, but somehow the room became even more focused. I would like to introduce you to Isabella Monroe, designer, artist, creator of this, he gestured to her dress, exceptional piece of work. Isabella's heart hammered. What was he doing? This dress, Minjun continued, represents something most of you have forgotten. It represents creation, not consumption, not acquisition, creation. He paused, letting the words sink in. Ms. Monroe spent 43 hours making this. Every seam was sewn by hand. Every curve was calculated. Every choice was intentional. This is not fashion. This is art. He turned to look at her, and his eyes held something she couldn't quite name. Respect, recognition, kinship. My mother taught me something, he said, still speaking to the crowd but looking at Isabella. She said, people who mock the work of others have never created anything worth remembering. They are consumers, parasites. They purchase meaning because they cannot generate it themselves. The words hung in the air like smoke after gunfire. Isabella watched Victoria's face cycle through emotions, shock, rage, humiliation, before settling on something that looked like fear. Minjun wasn't finished. Ms. Monroe, he said, turning fully to face her now. My organization, Becco Luxury Group, specializes in high-end fashion imports throughout Asia-Pacific. We work with exclusive designers. We provide them with unlimited resources, complete creative freedom, and protection. He emphasized that last word slightly. We are currently seeking a lead designer for our new sustainable luxury line. 3-year contract, 7-figure salary, full benefits, complete artistic control. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Isabella felt dizzy. 7 figures. That was life-changing money. That was security. That was everything she'd worked for handed to her on a silver platter. But nothing came free. Nothing ever came free. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Why me? Minjun's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Something that looked like approval. Because talent ignored is talent wasted, and I do not waste valuable assets. He paused, then added more quietly, just for her. Also, because my mother deserved better, and I cannot give it to her anymore. But perhaps I can give it to someone else who deserves it. Isabella felt tears threatening again, but these were different. These weren't tears of humiliation. These were something else entirely. I need to think about it, she heard herself say. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Minjun nodded. Of course. Take your time. My associate will contact you tomorrow with details. He reached into his jacket and produced a business card. Heavy cardstock. Embossed lettering. He placed it in her hand, and his fingers brushed hers briefly. One more thing. He turned back to the crowd. His gaze swept across the room and landed on Victoria, who looked like she wanted the marble floor to swallow her whole. Mrs. Ashford Chen was correct about one thing, Minjun said. Security should be called, just not for the reason she suggested. He pulled out his phone, tapped something, and held it up so the screen was visible to those nearby. I've just sent evidence of your stolen handbag to the NYPD. I've also informed them about your husband's outstanding warrants in Macau. They should be here within 15 minutes. Victoria made a sound like a wounded animal. You can't. You wouldn't. I already have. His voice remained perfectly calm. You should leave now. Use the side exit. If you hurry, you might reach your lawyer before the police reach your home.
2 security guards appeared at the edge of the crowd. Not hotel security. These men wore dark suits with subtle earpieces. They moved with military precision. Min Jun's men. Victoria looked at them, then at Min Jun, then at Isabella. For a moment, hatred blazed in her eyes, pure, undiluted loathing. Then survival instinct kicked in. She grabbed her Birkin bag and fled, her designer heels clicking frantically against the marble. Her friends scattered like roaches when the lights come on, suddenly desperate to be anywhere else. The ballroom exhaled collectively. Min Jun turned back to Isabella. The mask slipped just slightly, just enough for her to see the man beneath the monster. I apologize for the theatrics, he said quietly.
But some lessons need to be public. What you said about your mother, Isabella whispered. Was it true? His jaw tightened. Every word. She hanged herself in her sewing room when I was 12. I found her wearing the blue dress. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever made. And she wore it to die in because she wanted to be beautiful just once. Because she was tired of being invisible. Isabella's hand went to her mouth. Oh God. I built everything I have on that memory, Min Jun continued. His voice was low, meant only for her. Every dollar, every connection, every ounce of power, so that no one could ever dismiss me the way they dismissed her, so that I could protect people who create things, people who matter. He paused. People like you. But I don't know you, Isabella said. You don't know me. I know enough. He gestured to her dress. I know you spent 43 hours on something beautiful because you believed it mattered. I know you walked into a room full of predators with your head high. I know you didn't cry when they attacked you. I know you have dignity, even when people try to strip it from you. His eyes met hers. That's enough. Isabella looked down at the business card in her hand. Kang Min Jun, CEO, Beko Luxury Group. A phone number, an email address. An opportunity that terrified her almost as much as it tempted her. What if I say no? She asked. Then you say no. He shrugged slightly. The offer stands regardless, but I hope you won't. My mother would have wanted me to help someone like you. Someone who understands that creating beauty is an act of defiance against a world that wants us to be small. I'm not trying to be defiant, Isabella said. I'm just trying to survive. That's the same thing. Minjun smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. Just barely. Just enough. Surviving with dignity in a system designed to crush you. That's the most defiant thing you can do. Music started playing again, the string quartet taking their cue that the drama had ended. Conversations resumed, quieter now, more cautious. People began moving again, but they gave Minjun and Isabella a wide berth. A circle of space. A zone of respect born from fear. "I should go," Isabella said. She felt suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving her hollow. "I'll have my driver take you home," Minjun said. "He's waiting outside. Black sedan. He'll wait as long as you need." "That's not necessary." "It is to me." He said it with finality. "Please, allow me this small courtesy." Isabella nodded. She didn't have the energy to argue. And truthfully, the thought of taking the subway home in her emerald dress and her newly repaired shoes felt impossible right now. "Think about the offer," Minjun said as she turned to leave. "And Ms. Monroe?" She looked back. 43 hours of work deserves to be seen, deserves to be celebrated. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Isabella walked through the ballroom toward the exit. People watched her go. But this time, their eyes held something different. Not mockery, not dismissal. Something closer to awe. Or maybe fear. Or maybe respect. That thing she'd been chasing her entire life. The black sedan was exactly where Minjun said it would be. The driver, a middle-aged Korean man with kind eyes, opened the door for her without a word. The interior smelled like leather and money. As they pulled away from the hotel, Isabella looked back through the rear window. She could see Minjun through the glass doors, standing alone in the center of the ballroom. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom, or a ghost haunting the scene of his mother's death over and over, trying to rewrite the ending. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "The dress is extraordinary, the woman wearing it even more so. M.J." Isabella leaned back against the leather seat and closed her eyes. 43 hours. That's what it had taken to change her life. 43 hours of sewing and 14 minutes of humiliation. And one dangerous man who saw his dead mother in a stranger's dignity. She opened her eyes and looked at the business card again. Then she opened her phone and typed, "I have one condition." The response came within seconds. "Name it." 20% of all profits go to a scholarship fund for young designers from underserved communities. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then 30%. And you name the fund after her. After who? My mother, Kang Soo-jin. So they remember her. So they know her work mattered. Isabella felt something break open in her chest. Not pain, relief, recognition. The feeling of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. She typed, "Deal." Then she added, "Thank you for kneeling. No one has ever done that for me before." The response took longer this time. When it came, it was just 4 words. No one should have to. 3 months passed like water through cupped hands. Isabella stood in her new studio, a converted loft in Soho with floor-to-ceiling windows and sewing machines that cost more than her entire previous year's income, and tried to remember the woman she'd been that night at the gala. That woman felt like a stranger now, a ghost of someone who'd believed she had to shrink herself to survive. The Kang Soo Jin Foundation had launched 2 weeks ago. The press coverage had been massive. Not because of the money, though 30% of Becco Luxury Group's profits was a substantial fortune, but because of the story. The Mafia boss honoring his dead mother. The black designer given a chance. The socialite arrested for possession of stolen goods and her husband facing extradition to Macau. Redemption stories sold, especially when they came with receipts. But Isabella was learning that redemption was more complicated than the headlines suggested. Min Jun had visited the studio twice. Both times, he'd been accompanied by men in dark suits who stood outside and pretended they weren't armed. Both times, he'd examined her work with the careful attention of someone who understood craftsmanship. He'd pointed out a seam she'd missed, suggested a different drape for a jacket, asked thoughtful questions about sustainable fabric sourcing. He never mentioned his mother again, but Isabella saw her ghost in everything he did. On his second visit, after approving her designs for the spring collection, he'd paused at the door. "May I ask you something personal?" Isabella had nodded, though her stomach tightened with uncertainty. "That night at the gala, when Victoria and her friends were mocking you, why didn't you leave?" She'd thought about lying, about saying something noble or brave. But she owed him honesty. "Because I've been leaving my whole life. Every time someone made me feel small, I left. I walked away. I told myself it was dignity." She'd paused, remembering the weight of those eyes, the sting of those words. But that night, I realized leaving was just another word for surrender. So I stayed. Min Jun had studied her for a long moment. Then he'd said, "My mother never learned to stay. She left in the only permanent way she could." His voice had been flat, factual, but Isabella heard the wound beneath it. "I spent 23 years trying to understand why, and the only answer I have is that the world broke something in her that couldn't be fixed." "I'm sorry," Isabella had whispered. "Don't be. Use it." He'd gestured to the studio, to the designs pinned to the walls, to the future they were building together. Every piece you create, every designer you help through the foundation, every time you refuse to be small, that's how we fix what they broke. Not by saving one person, but by changing the system that breaks people. Now, standing alone in the studio, with fabric samples scattered across her desk, Isabella understood what he'd meant. This wasn't charity. This was warfare. Quiet, elegant, devastating warfare against every Victoria Ashford Chen who'd ever made someone feel worthless. Against every system that measured human value in dollars and skin color and zip codes. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Ms. Monroe. The voice was female, professional, cold. This is Detective Sarah Chen with the NYPD. I need to ask you some questions about Kang Min Jun. Isabella's blood froze. What kind of questions? The kind best asked in person. Can you come to the precinct this afternoon? Am I being accused of something? Not at this time, but Mr. Kang is under investigation, and you're listed as a business associate. We just need to establish the nature of your relationship. The call ended before Isabella could respond. She stared at her phone, mind racing. Of course, Min Jun was under investigation. He was a criminal. A real one. Not the romantic kind from movies, but the kind who hurt people, who broke laws, who built empires on suffering. She'd known that from the beginning. But somehow she'd convinced herself it didn't matter, that his kindness to her outweighed his cruelty to others. Now, reality was demanding payment. She called the number on his business card. It rang once. Isabella. His voice was calm. He already knew. The police want to talk to me. I know. Detective Chen called me first. It's routine. They're building a case, but they have nothing solid. They're fishing. Are you telling me to lie? Silence. Then, I'm telling you to be honest. Tell them exactly what happened. The gala, the contract, the foundation, all of it. He paused. The truth is the best defense, because the truth is that you've done nothing wrong. But you have. She said it quietly, but firmly. Haven't you? Another pause, longer this time. Yes. I have done many things that would horrify you. Things I will never tell you about, because you don't need that weight. But I have never lied to you about what I am. What are you? Isabella asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. I'm a man who watched his mother die, because the world convinced her she was worthless. And I decided that if the world worked that way, I would master its rules. I would become powerful enough that no one could dismiss me. No one could ignore me. No one could make me feel small ever again. His voice was steady, but she heard the old wound bleeding through. I've done terrible things in service of that goal. But I've also tried to do some good. You're part of that good, Isabella. You and the foundation and every designer we help. That's real. That matters. Does it matter enough? Isabella whispered. Does it balance the scales? No. He said it without hesitation. It never will. But it's better than doing nothing. Isabella closed her eyes. She thought about the scholarship recipients, 12 young designers already selected, already starting their education. She thought about the opportunities being created, the cycles being broken. She thought about a woman named Kung Soo Jin who'd sewn herself a blue dress and worn it to die in. I'll tell the truth, she said finally. All of it. Good. She heard relief in his voice. One more thing. Whatever happens to me, whether they arrest me or not, the foundation continues. It's in a protected trust. Your position is secure. The contracts are ironclad. You'll be fine. I don't want to be fine, Isabella said. I want to understand. That night at the gala, was it planned? Did you know I'd be there? The silence stretched so long, she thought he'd hung up. Then, yes, Mrs. Patterson is one of my legitimate investors. She told me about you, about your talent, about how you were struggling. She also told me about Victoria's group chat. They'd planned your humiliation. Victoria had been bragging about it for days, how she'd destroy the charity case who'd infiltrated their event. He paused. I decided to attend, to observe, to see if you were worth protecting. Isabella felt something cold settle in her stomach. So, it was a test. It was reconnaissance. But when I saw you standing there, refusing to cry, refusing to run, his voice softened. It stopped being about Victoria. It stopped being about revenge. It became about you, about seeing my mother in your dignity, about having a chance to do for you what I couldn't do for her. You used me, Isabella said, not angry, just stating fact. Yes, at first, but then he trailed off. Have you ever tried to use someone and ended up being changed by them instead? Isabella thought about the emerald dress, about 43 hours of work that had transformed from survival into defiance, about how she'd walked into that ballroom expecting nothing and walked out with everything. Yes, she said quietly. I have. That's what happened to me. Minjun's voice was quieter now, almost vulnerable. I planned to destroy Victoria and use you as the weapon. But when I knelt to fix your shoe, something shifted. I remembered why I started this. Not for revenge, but for people like my mother, people like you, people who create beauty despite the world's ugliness. Isabella looked around her studio, at the space Min Jun's money had bought, at the future his influence had secured, at the foundation bearing his mother's name. If they arrest you, she said, the foundation continues? Yes, guaranteed. Then I'll tell them the truth, all of it, and whatever happens, happens. She heard him exhale. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might not like what the truth does. The truth, Minjun said, is that a talented designer was humiliated by cruel people, and someone with power chose to defend her. The truth is that a foundation was created to honor a woman who deserved better. The truth is that sometimes good things come from complicated places. He paused. That truth won't hurt me, Isabella. It might actually save me. The call ended. Isabella sat in her studio as afternoon light slanted through the windows, turning everything gold. She thought about truth and lies and the space between them. She thought about her emerald dress, now displayed in the studio like art. She thought about Kang Soo-jin's blue dress, which Min-jun had told her he kept in a glass case in his office. 2 dresses, 2 women, 2 stories of survival and dignity and the price of being seen. She picked up her phone and called Detective Chen back. "I'll come to the precinct," she said, "and I'll tell you everything." Because that's what creators do. They tell the truth
stitch by stitch, seam by seam, until the whole picture becomes visible. Until people can finally see what was always there. Until no one can look away. If this story moved you,
stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been judged by your appearance instead of your work? Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people who decided you didn't belong? Have you ever had to choose between shrinking yourself to fit in or standing tall, even when it hurt? Tell us about your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories about dignity, justice, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.